After nearly 3 years in early access, the full version of Baldur's Gate 3 is releasing very soon, and this version comes with a ton of new content, classes, races, origins, and tadpoles to the game. So let's break it all down. Let me know in the comments if you're excited for Baldur's Gate 3 and what class you're going to play at launch. So, as you may already be aware, the early access version of Baldur's Gate 3 has been out for a substantially long time, and the full version of the game is launching on August 3rd for PC and on September 6th for PS5. It's also worth noting that on PS5 you can get early access if you pre-order the Digital Deluxe. You'll be able to play on September 3rd, but this won't be occurring for PC. It was previously, but because they made the release date 28 days earlier, I feel like that's enough early access, like a whole month. They are still working on the Xbox version. It's the Xbox Series S that's apparently the delay there, and they're going to release it eventually once it is done. But I feel like Xbox fans will be preoccupied with another giant game that's coming out on September 6th. So at a high level, really, what's coming with this launch of the game, the main additions are really the Act 2 and Act 3 to the game. So if you've played Divinity Original Sin 1 or 2, you'll sort of know the general structure of Larian Studios games. They fit within 3 acts, and each act is sort of like a massive area with a bunch of quests and various things to do. This will obviously have a bunch of new stories and conclude stories that started in the early access, as well as add the actual city of Baldur's Gate to the game, which is definitely very exciting. If you're worried about replaying Act 1, like say if you were playing the early access a bunch of times like I have, also by the way, none of the early access saves will transfer to the full game, Larian have stated that Act 1 makes up less than a quarter of the total content that will be available at launch, and compared to the start of early access, even Act 1 has roughly 33% more content in it. Much has changed, a lot has been added, and we're finally at a place where we're happy with the fidelity and performance of the game, which is honestly great to hear. I have known that they have added more content to Act 1 in the early access, but over the last sort of year-ish, I've been staying away from Baldur's Gate 3 and replaying the early access because I wanted it to feel fresh when the game actually comes out. I've already put 100 hours into the early access. I feel like I still want to at least enjoy myself and not remember everything that happens in the early access when the game does come out. But I think it's also worth mentioning here that even if you have just been blitzing through the game, playing it constantly, there is still going to be new things in this Act 1, not only because there's additional races and classes that you can play in the full version, but because they've actually changed some things. So in the Panel from Hell release showcase, we did see that Gale has a new introduction cinematic, and Will's character was mentioned to be completely reworked with the dialogue, and his story has been updated and changed a little bit to apparently be more interesting. Curious to know exactly what that means, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, that's not all really. There's also spells that weren't available in the early access that are coming, obviously, because we're going to be able to get above level 5. There'll be new spells there, but there's apparently over 600 spells in the full game. There's also double the amount of feats than in early access. There'll be new items, including legendary items. There's apparently 9 legendary items. And this is obviously because, with 2 extra acts, there's going to be more vendors and items and quest rewards and things to find, that sort of thing. But the big thing I think as well is the full edition of all the classes and all the races that are going to be available. So the classes we'll start with. Now, the game will launch with 12 classes and 46 subclasses. Every class that was available in the early access has at least one new subclass for the full game. So an example here being the Barbarian now has the Wild Magic subclass. The final class to be added being the Monk is also being added with their subclasses Open Hand, Shadow, and the 4 Elements subclass. There is more to this as well. So Larian have announced that multi-classing will be a thing that's also added. So when you level up, you'll have the option to select a level from a different class. In the screenshot that's provided, we can see the player is a level 4 Druid and a level 2 Barbarian. This is definitely a really cool addition to the game and allows you to sort of create any class combinations that you want. I think the downside here is that multi-classing is a super complex system, and they're actually removing the ability score prerequisites, so there's no more need to get your charisma up to that pesky 13 if you decide to make a soul pact with a playful archfey or dangerous fiend, so you can multi-class into anything your roleplay or build desires demand. So essentially there's no prerequisites, right? You can just be starting as any class and then just multi-class into a warlock if you wanted or anything like that. And I think that's a good thing for the freedom, but I also think that's a bad thing because you have that freedom. Like, there are definitely ways that you can make yourself significantly weaker or hamper your overall like build potential by multi-classing into the wrong things if you don't really know how it works. And I absolutely am one to tell you that I will have zero idea exactly how this works. Like, I've never experimented with multi-classing to that level in a D&D game. Like, it will be very interesting to see what sort of combinations you can actually make. But luckily, you will be able to respec. So if you do mess it up, which I probably will, you can respec your class and the levels via a particular NPC that will show up at your camp. Now, you have met him during Act 1, and in the full game, he will show up during Act 1 again, so you can do this pretty early, but you will also be able to see him later, like he'll just show up at your camp if you don't find him during Act 1. It's also worth mentioning as well that the level cap is 12, and for the astute-eyed player, there are 12 classes, so theoretically, you could multi-class and be level 1 in all 12 classes. Sounds like a good time. All right, so the races. Now, there are 11 races in the full version with 31 sub-races, so not as many classes and subclasses, but still a ridiculous number. So all the races from the early access are obviously here, including the ones that they added over time, like the gnomes, but the new full game will have half-orcs and dragonborns and their 10 sub-races. Now, this is an amazing addition because dragonborns are my favorite class and I can't wait to play as them, but also the fact that races are actually going to be a really important decision. Now, they already were during the early access, but I think it's worth mentioning here that you can respec your class, but you won't be able to respec your race. And that's why it is an important decision, because it impacts dialogue choices and it will probably lock you into certain decisions or potentially allow you to access different decisions. Something that maybe comes to mind is like Lae'zel, one of the companions or origin characters, being a Githyanki, and the ties to what happens with her people that you can do. Say if you start as a Yankee or you even start as Lae'zel, you know, you probably will be making decisions based around your race and allowing access to different dialogue or outcomes because of that. So it's definitely going to be an important decision, and probably one of the most important decisions you'll make in the character creator, because the class you can sort of change, right? Even if you don't like the class you pick, you just leave that as level 1, spend your other 11 levels on something else, and it's not going to be so bad, right? In the early access version, the character creator, depending on the race you pick, there are ability score bonuses that are tied to that race or that sub race. This is no longer the case. They are now actually just like an option. You'll get a +2 modifier and a +1 modifier that you can add to any ability point that you choose. So it's a little bit more freedom here, and it allows you to sort of pick any race, even if it's not like optimal, you know, based on the decisions maybe in the character creator and the early access. So you can be any race and any real class option here while still having those like min-maxing aspects. But the race features are still there, like something like, you know, dark vision, allowing you to see in the dark. Those things are still there. It's just those ability score modifiers are a little bit different compared to what we have in the current early access. The companions or origin characters are also going to be fully playable in the full version of the game. So these are the playable heroes, with each have their own stories, desires, and attitudes towards the worlds around you, and if you don't choose them as your character, they will appear in the game as companions. Now, in the early access, we have Astarion and Shadowheart, Will, Gale, and Lae'zel, and I'll have a video breaking down all these origin characters as well, so make sure you subscribe for that. But there is going to be 2 new ones. The main one is Karlach, which is a tiefling that you've probably seen in the early access if you have been playing it, but she is fresh escaped from hell. Karlach is finally free of the archdevil Zariel, but not from the infernal engine Zariel planted in her chest. She is described in the panel from hell as a good character, and that's definitely welcome, because all the other origin characters are sort of either like grey, not particularly good, so it's good to have like, you know, a good character, good in, you know, descriptive words, but good character that's being added as a companion. Now, the last one is really interesting, and that is the Dark Urge. Now, the Dark Urge is a fully customizable origin character. They're not available as a companion, so if you don't pick them, they won't appear in the game in that way. Now, as the Dark Urge, you begin Baldur's Gate 3 with your memory lost after an unfortunate encounter between a parasitic tadpole and your brain. Now, all that's left is the insatiable urge, an urge that makes itself known in your subconscious through your deepest thoughts and in your dialogue options. Now, that urge to do unspeakable evil things, you can either choose to lean into or try and avoid. That's up to you as you play the game. But while the Dark Urge won't be available as a companion, a writer at Larian Studios has confirmed that if you don't play as the Dark Urge, you will still encounter them in the world. They just won't appear as like a companion like the other Origin characters will. Now, if you don't like these companions, or you kill them all, or some other shenanigans happens, there will be hirelings. There will be 12 hirelings that you can recruit, one for each class. Each has their own name, visuals, race, and can be respec'd at any time. So they're essentially just like characters that can fill out your party to help you with combat, but they won't have any of the complexities that the companion characters will have. Now, with all the previews and everything that's been occurring, I just wanted to touch on a couple of extra details that we do also have. The first is alchemy crafting. So in the community update, we did see a screenshot of crafting for alchemy, which is sort of like allowing you to craft elixirs, poisons, weapon codes, grenades, that sort of a thing. Now, in the early access, you can sort of do some like light weapon crafting, so I'm interested to see if that expands on the full game as well. And a big thing that anyone may notice too is that the tadpole powers, or like the illithiliad powers, have actually been changed. So in the early access, you sort of use them in dialogue options and a little bit to communicate with your companions, but in the full version, you'll actually collect tadpoles that you find throughout the world, and you can use these to like upgrade specific powers, or like tadpole powers, in its own sort of like a skill tree system. So if you choose to lean into those and like fully lean into the power that the tadpoles give you, you can do that, or you can choose not to, but there's a bit more complexity and sort of like extra progression in that way. But exactly how that works, we're gonna have to wait and see for the full game, which is just around the corner. I'm very excited to pick this up, but let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Are you going to be playing Baldur's Gate 3? What class are you picking? Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.